This is The Gospel According to, a production of the local church. I'm Brent Levy. When you hear the word gospel, you might think of the Gospel according to Matthew or Mark or Luke or John, one of the four narrative accounts of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. The stories of his life that have been preserved and passed down, told and retold through the centuries. The word gospel literally means good news. And so when we talk about the gospel according to Luke, for instance, we're thinking about the good news of God for the world in and through Luke's eyes as he shares the story of Jesus. But the story of God is still being written. And you, yes, you are a part of it. We all are. And each of us carries that good news, that gospel with us, even now. And so in this production, The Gospel According to, we're going to meet good people doing good work and invite them to share their own good news, their own gospel, with hope that it will not only inform, but inspire our own gospel stories. You can watch these interviews on our YouTube channel or listen on the local church podcast network, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. So let's get into it. According to the Equal Justice Initiative, between 1877 and 1950, 4,400 Black people were lynched in the United States. Lynching was a violent and deadly act of public torture in which primarily African Americans were hanged, tortured, drowned, burned, or otherwise desecrated, often for what might not even be considered a crime. Instead, lynchings occurred for a social transgression like a perceived lack of respect toward a white person or for not crossing to the other side of the street when a white person walked by. Other times, victims were lynched because of a seeming sexual advance or based on accusations of murder or arson or theft. And even in these cases centered on a crime, there was often no due process, no trial by jury, and regularly no evidence either. Lynching was used for intimidation, exploitation, and control, and it contributed to the further dehumanization of Black people in the U.S. Of the 4,400 lynchings in the United States, 6 occurred in Chatham County, North Carolina, the second highest amount among all of North Carolina's counties. Between 1885 and 1921, Chatham County saw the lynchings of Harriet Finch, Jerry Finch, John Pattisall, Lee Tyson, Richard Cotton, and Eugene Daniel. But here's the thing. If you grew up in Chatham County even recently, you would not have learned about these lynchings because the names of the victims and their stories have been hidden. They've been swept under the rug. They've been whitewashed over time in favor of a more palatable history. But Mary Nettles and Bob Pearson, part of the Community Remembrance Coalition Chatham, or CRC-C, they're trying to change that. They want to help Chatham residents come to know the full history of Chatham County, including grappling with the lynchings and the history of racial violence in our community, all with the hope that we would be able to experience real reconciliation toward a better and brighter future. I talked with Mary and Bob about how CRC-C came to be, their experience with the history of Chatham County, and where we might find good news, even in light of such a hard, heavy, and unjust history. Here's our conversation. I'm delighted to have Mary Nettles and Bob Pearson from the Community Remembrance Coalition Chatham with us today to talk about their work, how it came to be, and so much more. Mary is the president of the board of CRC-C, that's Chatham Community Remembrance Coalition Chatham, and also the president of the Chatham Community Branch of the NAACP. Bob is the co-coordinator of the CRC-C and serves on the education committee of the Chatham Community Branch of the NAACP as well. And so thanks to you both for being here today. It's good to have you.
Thank you.
I would love to start with just the question: what is the Community Remembrance Coalition Chatham? What is it? What is your mission and purpose? And let's start there.
I'm so thankful that Mr. Pearson came to my meeting back in 2018 and just kind of alarmed us with information in the county that I was not familiar with. And the others in the meeting that day, we had never heard this before, so we immediately wanted to learn more about it. And that was about the 6 that was lynched in the county, and with one being a female. That made me very interested.
Bob, what was that experience like, going and meeting Mary and sharing that?
Well, as soon as I contacted Mary, she invited me to the meeting, and we had a good group there, including the county sheriff and the chief deputy and some other folks, and explained this history, which I think, as Mary says, was almost completely unknown in Chatham County. And our mission from the very start was to use these kinds of truths to improve race relations in the county. Hidden history will always stay with you, but once you have told the truth and you can deal with it, then it goes behind you and you move on to other things. So that's really been what we've been working on for nearly the last 3.5 years now. How did you
discover that truth, Bob, about the 6 lynchings?
I read a book, we all did, I think, by Brian Stevenson called Just Mercy, which recounted his life dealing with criminal law cases in Alabama. And then he founded the Equal Justice Institute in Montgomery, Alabama. They have published a study which reports the lynchings in all the counties of the United States. Of course, most of them were in the South. And there were 6 people registered as having been lynched in Chatham County, North Carolina, and there had been some work done at UNC on the lives of these people. So once we found that source, then it was very easy to find reliable history to start telling people about what happened and why it happened and what the results of it were.
I was intrigued by the mission and vision statement that's on the website, which we'll certainly link to. You have a vision to invite all Chatham citizens to remember the, quote, full truth and history of race relations in Chatham County. And you both began to speak to that full truth piece. Why do you think it's been so difficult to discover that full truth? I mean, it seems like there's been a whitewashing, to be sure. Just would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, my thoughts on it is, from my perspective, is by me being in the county, and those that did the shooting and the lynching, they still have bloodlines still in the county.
Still roots here. Yeah, sure.
Right. And they're trying to protect their grandparents or great grandparents, or even themselves being there, knowing about it. So it's just, they're trying to do all they can to keep it hid.
And I think, too, that's right. And I think, too, that people have the impression that there's never any history for what you're doing and where you're doing it and what life is like. It's it's all in the present tense. But a lot of what's true about Chatham County is the result of things that happened in the past. Mm-hmm. So there's also a kind of an attempt to say that, well, we had desegregation. Now, I have Black friends. I work well with Black people, as if that was the solution. So all we need to do now is look at today and go forward. But the truth is that a lot of today was formed by yesterday, and accepting the truth that had been hidden for all these years as part of the real history of the county does make a difference in people's perception of what has happened here and where we need to go now and for tomorrow. Mm.
The truth is liberating, is it not? And that doesn't it doesn't mean it can't be a painful truth, right? And it is in so many ways, but as it says in Scripture, and as we know to be true, the truth sets you free. And so it sounds to me too like there is a liberating aspect to your work in that sense.
Well, I think there is. Mary can give you her perspective, but yeah, when you acknowledge the truth, you get to put it in its proper place. Otherwise, it's actually with you every day because it's all around you, and you haven't accepted. In our case, you haven't accepted the consequences of what happened in the past. So if you want to know what life today is like, you have to figure out what happened. And everybody has a history. The Black community here in Chatham County really wasn't acknowledged in the history of the county. And the last history book that the county published in 1971 on the 200th anniversary has one chapter in the whole book about the Black community, and the chapter is entitled The Negro. And so you can see what the state of mind was then. And so part of our work is telling the truth that will help people understand, maybe change their minds.
It's just seemed to be a hard road in trying to get a certain group of Chatham citizens to recognize it, even in not all Black communities, but some of the Blacks says, it's in the past. Let's just leave it in the past, and because they don't want to face it. And then you have the whites who it was their ancestors, and they definitely don't want to face it. So sometimes it's like, well, to me, I feel that it needs to be told. And I'm trying to tell it and trying to get others to acknowledge it and remember that, we could probably be on the same scale as you are if we would have had the opportunity. Because by me growing up in a Black community, a Black church, a lot of this was hidden from me, but I'm sure I know it happened. But it was just my age, because I'm 67 now. So, of course, those that's older definitely will have a different perspective than I would have on it.
It sounds like you first discovered it. You first learned about it when Bob came to your meeting. Is that right?
2018.
What was that like for you to learn that?
Shocking, and I wanted to know more. And it was like, really? Tell me more. Who was it? Where are the bodies? Where are they at? These are somebody that lives here in the county, because believe it or not, a lot of us are still in the county. My great grandparents both were slaves in Pittsburgh area, and they're buried in the woods. So, they had 9 kids themselves. And out of the 9 kids, each one of them kids, especially the boys, the branches off, and we got 10 or 12 kids came from them branches. So we have all different last names, but we still came from one tree that's here in the county. So it's like, some of these are my blood ancestors that was treated this way. And then when I read about how they were treated, the slaves was treated, it's like the peoples treated their animals better than they did us. Mm-hmm. So it's like, and we didn't even ask to come here. That's the part that, that's the part that it's like, if the boat pulled up and said, do you want to go to America? And we all ran and jumped on it and said, yes, we do want to go. That's one thing, but we didn't ask to come here.
And no agency.
And then when we got here, we've been treated less than their pets. They treated their family pets better than they treated us. They brought us here to serve them. Mm-hmm. And this is my bloodline. So yes, I wanted to know more. I wanted to know who these people are. How am I connected to this?
Sure. What did you find?
Well, we're still looking. I was glad to find Eugene Daniels' family line, and I've known them forever. So that one I was real happy to. The other 5, the Pattersons, there's some Pattersons in my church. There's some Pattersons buried out at my home church. And I talked to some of them, and it's like, well, no, they didn't know absolutely nothing about it. And the lady that was lynched, she was a dowdy before she married. And we have dowdies in the county, and they all know, we know kin to them. We came from, mention maybe South Carolina or somewhere else. They told me they came from somewhere else. And I'm going, well, you probably did, but how did you end up right here in Chatham County if you didn't come back to where your roots are? And, I could tell people, yeah, I'm from New York or whatever, because a lot of the ones from the South, they sent their kids away. I have an uncle that was sent to Waterbury, Connecticut, so he could have a better job and a better life. My biological mother, after giving birth to 4 of us, she went to New York to get a job. Never came back. I mean, she sent money to help support us, but by the time she got back, I was an adult, but she came back to visit. But it's like a lot of the Blacks sent their kids up north, and some eventually came back. Some did not. So some of them raised their kids different places, and the kids grew up thinking, well, I'm from New York, or I'm from New Jersey, I'm from this place. When you think about it, your great grandparents came from the South. So I've had to talk to some of them. It's like, well, okay, you grew up such and such a place, but where did your grandmother and your great grandmother, where did they come from? Some recognize that, yes, down south. A lot of them did, and some they don't even know.
And Bob, feel free to chime in here. As you have done this work of illuminating the full truth, the history of the 6 individuals lynched in Chatham County. Mary, you mentioned that folks don't want to hear about it. Both white people who don't want to deal with that part of their story, but also you said Black persons as well who don't who just want to keep going, right? So how do you help people to own this truth in a way that does move forward, but also reckons with that truth and that history? How do you do that work well?
Well, the older ones that have told me, well, let's just leave it in the past. They're older Blacks. It's not the younger Blacks, it's the older Blacks. And I think because the older Blacks has protected us for so long, by ignoring that, they want to still try to protect their family. Because I know it's still clans out here in Chatham County. And they're keep trying to protect what has happened themselves, I don't believe what really happened to Eugene was the truth. Maybe it was, maybe it was not. But in my mind, I don't believe it was the truth. What I read about the other 5, I don't believe it was the truth, but could have been. But I just don't believe it. So I felt
when you say you read about it, what did you read? I'm just curious. Well,
reading about the husband and wife, they killed them over a man and a woman was supposed to have been killed with an axe. And this group pretend that they found the blood on the axe, the reason why it went straight to their house, directed them straight to these people's house or some of that nature, something like that. I mean, it's been maybe a couple of years since I've read about that, but I just don't believe it. You can't just kill one person just because you believe that they killed someone else. You got to know for sure. Mm-hmm. And there was really never a trial on any of this.
Right.
And if what I read, and not in the red records, but someone else had dug a little deeper, and from what she had read about the female, it's like the female was pregnant, and the only thing they had on the female was because of her husband. So they were killing the woman, a pregnant woman, because of the husband. But like I said, this was something that was someone else had found this on the website and had shared it at a meeting, and it's just like kind of stood out with me as to what. And they hung the female last. Why did you hang her last? So, and then the Jones guy, and from me coming up, blacks and whites, we could kind of hang out and play together in the neighborhoods because we lived in there. I mean, it might be a little village with your immediate family, grandparents, aunts, and uncles in one section, but less than a half a mile, there was whites living there, and we knew the whites. A lot of times they were our relatives. Whether people want to admit it, a lot of the whites don't want to admit it, that a lot of us blacks in the county are their blood cousins. They don't want to admit it, but we're all one. So you could play with them in the neighborhood. You could go to their house and eat. That was white people's house that I hung out at, coming up. The lady who raised me, grandfather, was half white. My father had a decent living, I would think, and that's because of a white person showing them how to do a certain thing, and that was still because of the bloodline. So we still had whites that was trying to help some blacks because they acknowledged that they were relatives. But if you saw them out on the street, they're going on the other side of the street or expect us to go on the other side of the street because they didn't know us. So wow. I can see really what happened with Eugene, how he could have very easily got tangled up into that because they were neighbors. And if all reports is true, Eugene, from what I've heard, I didn't know him, but from what I heard, Eugene was what we would consider high yellow. So a person that was certain colors, they were either brown skin or paper bag brown or high yellow and stuff. So he was like high yellow. And that time of the year in the summertime, his family had a farm. The neighbor's family had a farm. They out there in that hot sun. They the same complexion pretty much. So he probably didn't know. This is just me thinking. They had been neighbors. He probably didn't know that she was really white and he was really considered black because they had been farmers hanging out pretty much together. Now, this is what I think.
Sure.
And then it's kind of strange as to the night that he was in her bedroom. From what I read, he walked past the mama's bedroom and past the brother's bedroom, and he ended up in her bedroom. How did he know which one was her bedroom? So it's just things that if you read about what happened, it just don't add up. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And even with the other 5.
No, well, thank you, Mary. That's a really, really powerful account of the way life was. And all of it was covered up. And the system that wanted to cover it up, run by the white officials of the county, was designed to make sure that nobody knew that history. None of these people were ever officially, formally charged with a crime. None of the murderers were ever identified, indicted, investigated, and everybody in the community, in the white community, knew who they were. So they lived the rest of their lives knowing that they had killed these people, and they would never be called to account because their friends and the people they supported were going to make sure that they never were held account for it. So it also showed the way the system worked, and it lasted a long time. When the Social Security Act was passed, I think like 1934, the white segregationists in the South made sure that blacks who, quote, were domestic servants or who worked for tips were excluded from Social Security. When they passed the Fair Labor Standards Law, I think in 1937 or 8, they said people who work for tips were not covered by the hourly minimum wage. When they passed the GI Bill, which everybody remembers as being a wonderful, wonderful thing, they didn't require that banks make those loans without regard to race, color, creed, faith, or national origin. And so the New York Times has reported that in New York and New Jersey, which we all think of as very liberal states, over a period of 2 or 3 years after 1944, when the GI Bill was passed, 100,000 loans were made to white veterans and 100 were made to black veterans. So all those black veterans who had endured the same conditions had to go back to labor jobs, had to go back to zero to start all over again. And part of teaching the truth is so that people will recognize what the results were for today, and recognizing that, start thinking about what needs to be done to make it right. What changes you have to make in law and economy and jobs and so on to make us really an equal society. So that's a big part of the purpose for our trying to make sure that history is taught. It has a purpose, and that is to change tomorrow. Mm-hmm. If you know history, it's to change tomorrow.
Thank you, Bob. There is a real sense in what you shared about the GI Bill and the labor standards, pointing to the systemic, how this runs deep, systemic racism, but also, Mary, I was thinking about when you were sharing, I was thinking about when George Floyd was murdered and the initial police report that came out, that was so very different, how it described the events than what we saw in that video. And so, and you talking about, how Eugene's situation was narrated and described. So, as much as we want a better tomorrow, we're still seeing that cover up, which is it's on display for us.
It's deep down rooted. I think we'll get there one day.
Yeah.
I may not see it, but I think we'll get there one day.
I'm not sure who will see it, but the point is that since history has a purpose, which is to see what needs to be changed, that's the second part of our mantra, our purpose, which is justice. And when people in the Black community and the white community see what needs to be done and they begin to do it, then you're on the road to reconciliation. So people are always asking me, can people really reconcile? And the answer is, if they want to.
That's right.
If they are determined to do so, that is quite possible. And we live in a better world today than we might have lived in 150 years ago. The job is not nearly finished, but it is possible. So I'm a big fan of Bishop Desmond Tutu and his life. And he had the most horrible circumstances possible to deal with in South Africa, where the division between the two communities was enormous. And he said that you've got to have acknowledgement of the truth, and then you have to have a community willingness for everybody to go forward. So that's really what we're working on, and I'm sure Mary will live to see it. And so,
I hope so.
That's the job.
I believe that we will see that too. What do you think that looks like here in Chatham County?
I think it's going to be great. I just think people are going to not look at color. They're just going to, when a job comes up, it's not going to so much as be their relative or someone they went to school with or something. It's going to be the one who is most qualified for it. I'm going to see Blacks and whites living side by side. Everybody going out to the restaurants because they all can afford to go out and eat good, Our gardens, I can see our neighbors, sharing. I think it's going to be, I think it's going to be good for the whole county to embrace this and try to work together and stop trying to be up here and put everybody else beneath you, because we don't belong beneath you. We're God's children. We all are God's children. So all of us should be treated equal.
It's also one of the fastest growing counties in North Carolina. It's now officially part of the Triangle. And so we actually have this opportunity, Brent, to make Chatham County a kind of model for the rest of the state. And it's a once in a lifetime opportunity because of the pace of change in the county. Lots of jobs are coming in here. So this is a chance when some people say history is plastic. This is a very plastic moment for Chatham County. So that's why we're trying to tell this story. Make it right now. And if you make it right now, it will be right forever. If you don't make it right now, it will be wrong for a long, long time. So that's part of the message we're trying to bring to people.
And what has surprised you about this work in the last 3 years since CRC-C has begun? Is there anything that has kind of caught you by surprise in a good way or in a not so good way?
Well, I have learned that it's a lot of good black and white in the county. And it's a lot of whites that's here to help the blacks. We just need to embrace it so we can move forward, because we kind of like been, suppressed. It's like, oh, that's a shame what happened to you or what happened, and go sit back down. And I'm talking whites, whites that we have known all our life. It's like, did you see that or did you hear that? And that's a shame.
That's too
bad. But they don't raise their hand to try to help. And now we seem to have whites in the county that are willing to help. So I'm one that's embracing the help myself. And there's others. But, there are some that their lives are so busy doing this and doing that. And, they have been taught, you stay in your own little lane.
That's right.
Go to work, go to church, go back home, take care of family, don't get involved in all this other stuff because, you've been taught that,
So we had a rally after the death of George Floyd here in Pittsburgh. And we had a number of people come and speak. And I'll tell you what was really great to see. There was a large number of white people in our audience. And of those white people, a large number of them were high school kids who had come over to be part of this rally. So I knew that something had changed that had not existed before. And I think that Mary's absolutely right. There are people now willing to step forward to actually see where we have to go and who are willing to lend a hand. And I would say the same thing for the Black community too. Mary's described the attitude of some of the people there well, but now there are more people who understand that if you want to make a change, you have to pick up a tool to make that change. And we're seeing that too. So we're going in the right direction. And the only question is, what's the pace and how much time it takes?
If someone wants to get involved or learn more about the Community Remembrance Coalition Chatham, what's the best way to do that?
Well, go to our website, crc-c.org. We list current and we list upcoming events and past events on our homepage. There's a contact page under About Us. We welcome anybody getting in touch with us. And there are some other articles in there about things that have happened that affect people in the county. It's really all about what goes on in Chatham County. So we're not the University of North Carolina. We're not trying to teach courses. We're trying to show how what we're doing affects the lives of people here. So we always need volunteers. We always make great use of new volunteers. And so I would start there, crc-c.org.
You do a great job keeping it up to date, Bob. I know that you're the webmaster there. And so I've been on it, and I appreciate all the work that you put into to making that happen. And the last question is, how do you experience good news in and through your work with the CRC-C? Where's the good news?
Well, to me, the good news is the word is getting out. People are connecting Community Remembrance Coalition Chatham with CRC-C whenever they see it. People are going out on the website, seeing what we're doing. I send out a lot of emails, whether they join in on listening to what's going on or not. It's not like they don't know what's getting ready to happen, but everybody's lives are so busy going in different directions. Some don't take the time. So it all depends on where you put your priorities, but some don't take the time to maybe at 7:00 at night, listen to it, but it's not like they don't know about it. So to me, I know the word is getting out, whether they tune in or not. It's not like if you see me, I can't even attempt to carry on a decent conversation with you because I know absolutely nothing. I do know at least a little something about it. So to me, the word is getting out.
Love that. I love that.
Yeah, I might just add that everything that we see that we're trying to deal with to change, Brent, is in the rearview mirror. It does not represent the road ahead. It's not up there in the road ahead. It's disappearing. So we, good people of whatever color and heritage, really are kind of getting together to say, okay, we want the road forward for us to be without these things. And however we work those problems out will be dealt with those people who are on that road. But that's the important part for me. And it wasn't true necessarily 4 years ago. But now I think all those things are in the rearview mirror, and that's where they belong.
Mm-hmm.
To that, I say amen. Amen. Thank you. Thank you both so much for spending some time with us, to share about Community Remembrance Coalition Chatham. And we look forward to continued partnership and solidarity in the days and weeks and months, years ahead, to make it right now and in the future, and live into that vision, that picture that you paint so beautifully. Mary, thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I want to again thank Mary and Bob for their time and for the empowering and insightful conversation, the exhortation to make it right now. We'll post additional resources for further study in the YouTube description and the podcast show notes as well. For more on CRC-C, you can visit crc-c.org. The Gospel According To is a production of The Local Church, a bold and inclusive faith community in Chatham County, North Carolina, committed to being with and for one another, our community, and the world. We gather for worship every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. at Woods Charter School in Chapel Hill, and we would love to see you there for it. And you can also find us online at thelocalchurchpbo.org or on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at localchurchpbo. Until next time, carry that good news and love where you are.